Why someone fell dangerously deep in love with you. Three powerful reasons. There are moments in life when love arrives so unexpectedly, so intensely, that it seems to defy all logic. Someone looks at you, thinks about you, remembers your voice, replays your conversations, and slowly realizes that their heart has crossed a line from simple admiration into something much deeper. They did not plan it. They did not wake up one morning deciding to fall in love. Yet somehow, without force, without manipulation, and without chasing, they found themselves thinking of you constantly. If you've ever wondered why this happens, why one person becomes unforgettable while another fades into memory, then today's message is for you. The truth is that deep love is rarely created by appearances alone. Physical attraction may capture attention, but it cannot hold a heart forever. Real love is born in the invisible world before it ever appears in the visible one. It begins with energy, with assumptions, with emotions, with the silent story we tell ourselves about who we are and what we deserve. Every thought repeated with feeling becomes a seed planted in the subconscious mind, and every seed eventually produces a harvest. This is why some people walk into a room and instantly leave an unforgettable impression. Their greatest power is not what they wear or what they say. It is the state of consciousness they consistently embody. Today, we're going to uncover three powerful reasons why someone may have fallen dangerously deep in love with you. These reasons are not about controlling another person's emotions or making anyone obsess over you. Instead, they reveal timeless principles about attraction, emotional connection, and the extraordinary influence of the inner world upon the outer world. When you understand these principles, you'll begin to see that love is not something you chase. It is something you become aligned with. As we explore these ideas together, I invite you to listen with an open mind. Perhaps you'll recognize your own experiences. Perhaps you'll understand why certain people entered your life so powerfully. Or perhaps you'll discover how your own inner transformation has been quietly shaping your relationships all along. By the end of this message, you may realize that the greatest mystery of love has never been about finding the right person. It has always been about becoming the version of yourself that naturally inspires the deepest, most genuine connection. So settle in, open your heart, and prepare to discover why someone didn't simply like you, they fell deeply, profoundly, and almost irresistibly in love with the person you chose to become. Your energy spoke before your words ever did, before someone ever admitted their feelings, before they found themselves checking their phone hoping to see your name. Before they replayed your conversations in their mind late at night, something much deeper had already begun. It wasn't your appearance alone. It wasn't a perfectly crafted sentence or a dramatic romantic moment. It was your energy. Every human being broadcasts an invisible emotional signal through their dominant thoughts, beliefs, and feelings. Whether we realize it or not, people respond to that silent language long before they respond to anything we consciously say. Your inner world has a way of introducing you before your personality ever gets the chance. That is why two people can say the exact same words, yet one leaves a lasting impression while the other is quickly forgotten. The difference is never merely in the words. It is in the state of consciousness from which those words are spoken. Think about the people who have influenced your own life the most. Chances are, what you remember isn't every sentence they spoke. You remember how they made you feel. You remember the peace you experienced around them, the confidence they inspired, or the hope they awakened inside you. Feelings are remembered far longer than facts. The emotional atmosphere some creates becomes their true signature. When your inner life is filled with confidence instead of insecurity, gratitude instead of lack, and love instead of fear, you naturally radiate an emotional presence that others cannot easily explain. They may tell themselves they simply enjoy being around you, but what they are really experiencing is the effect of your consistent inner state. That invisible presence becomes magnetic because it offers something increasingly rare in today's world: authenticity. People spend so much time trying to become more attractive on the outside that they often neglect the one thing that creates lasting attraction on the inside. Real magnetism begins when you stop seeking validation from everyone around you and instead become secure in your own worth. There is remarkable freedom in no longer needing constant approval. Ironically, the moment you stop trying to convince people to love you is often the moment they begin feeling drawn toward you. Confidence that grows from genuine self-acceptance carries a completely different energy than confidence built upon ego or performance. One is peaceful, while the other is exhausting. Someone fell deeply in love with you because your presence felt like a place where they could finally breathe without pretending. Every thought you repeatedly entertain becomes part of the atmosphere you carry wherever you go. If you continually think, I am valuable, I deserve meaningful relationships, I bring peace into every room I enter, those assumptions gradually shape your behavior, your body language, your tone of voice, and even your facial expressions. You begin smiling without forcing it. You listen more deeply because you are no longer consumed by self-doubt. You make eye contact with quiet confidence rather than nervous hesitation. These subtle shifts appear effortless to others, yet they communicate far more than words ever could. Without realizing it, someone began associating your presence with emotional comfort, inspiration, and possibility. Their heart responded before their mind ever understood what was happening. This is why trying to force love rarely succeeds. Love cannot be manufactured through manipulation because manipulation always carries the vibration of fear. Fear asks, what if they leave? What if I'm not enough? Love, however, quietly declares, I already know my worth and I freely share it. The energy behind these two approaches is completely different. One pushes people away while the other naturally invites them closer. Someone who fell deeply in love with you wasn't responding to pressure or persuasion. They were responding to the emotional consistency they experienced whenever they were in your presence. They sensed stability in a world filled with uncertainty. They found sincerity in a culture often driven by appearances. That feeling became unforgettable. Have you ever noticed how some conversations remain in your memory long after you have forgotten the details? That is because emotion imprints itself more deeply than information. When someone walked away after spending time with you, they carried an emotional impression that continued long after the conversation ended. Perhaps they felt encouraged. Perhaps they felt understood. Perhaps they felt accepted without needing to prove themselves. Those feelings quietly accumulated over time until one day they realized they were thinking about you more than they intended. Your energy had become part of their emotional landscape. They began comparing every new interaction to the peace they experienced with you, and few people could measure up. The remarkable truth is that your greatest influence often occurs when you are not trying to influence anyone at all. Authentic energy cannot be imitated for long because it grows from genuine beliefs about yourself and life. When you consistently live from a place of gratitude, purpose, and self-respect, your presence becomes a silent invitation for others to experience those same qualities. People are naturally attracted to those who remind them of what is possible. Your calm reassures their anxiety. Your optimism challenges their hopelessness. Your confidence awakens their own forgotten strength. They may describe you as inspiring, comforting, or different, but beneath all those descriptions lies one simple reality. They felt more like themselves when they were with you. That is the first powerful reason someone fell dangerously deep in love with you. Your energy spoke before your words ever did. Long before love was confessed, your inner world was quietly shaping their outer experience. Every peaceful thought, every act of self-respect, every moment you chose faith over fear, became part of the invisible message you carried into every interaction. They didn't merely notice your appearance or admire your personality, they experienced your presence. And once someone truly experiences a presence that feels genuine, uplifting, and deeply authentic, it becomes extraordinarily difficult to forget. In the end, people may remember what you said, they may even remember what you did, but above all, they will always remember how your energy made their soul feel. You reflected the version of them they secretly wanted to become. The second powerful reason someone fell dangerously deep in love with you is far more profound than simple attraction. It has little to do with appearances and everything to do with identity. Every person carries within them two versions of themselves. One is the person they currently believe they are, shaped by past experiences, disappointments, and limitations. The other is the person they quietly dream of becoming, the confident individual who lives with courage, joy, abundance, and purpose. Most people rarely speak about this hidden version of themselves, yet it silently influences every decision they make. Then, one day, someone enters their life whose presence seems to awaken that sleeping possibility. Without even trying, you became a mirror reflecting back the greatness they had almost forgotten existed within them. They didn't simply admire you, they saw, through you, the life they longed to live. Human beings are naturally drawn toward whatever expands their sense of possibility. Think about the people who have inspired you throughout your life. It wasn't merely their success that attracted you, it was the feeling that somehow your own life could become greater because they existed. True inspiration is contagious because it awakens dormant potential. In the same way, your attitude, your resilience, your kindness, or your unwavering belief in brighter days communicated something far beyond words. Every time they spent time with you, they felt a little more hopeful, a little more confident, and a little more capable of becoming the person they secretly wanted to be. Those moments accumulated until your presence became associated with personal transformation rather than ordinary companionship. One of the greatest gifts you can offer another person is not advice but example. Advice is quickly forgotten, but example leaves a permanent impression. You may not have realized it, but the way you handled setbacks, the calmness with which you faced uncertainty, or the gratitude you expressed during difficult seasons, silently taught them lessons they had never learned elsewhere. They watched how you responded instead of reacted. They observed how you refused to allow temporary circumstances to define your future. Every time you chose hope over fear, patience over frustration, or confidence over insecurity, you demonstrated a different way of living. Without realizing it, they began asking themselves, what if I could become more like that? That question became the beginning of something much deeper than admiration. It became the foundation of profound emotional attachment. There is a remarkable principle that operates within every relationship. People often fall in love with the way they feel about themselves when they are with you. Around certain individuals, people feel criticized, inadequate, or constantly judged. Around others, they feel empowered, accepted, and encouraged. Which environment do you think creates lasting affection? The answer is obvious. When someone consistently leaves your presence believing more in themselves than they did before they arrived, your influence extends far beyond ordinary conversation. You become associated with growth. You become connected to hope. You become a reminder that life does not have to remain the way it has always been. This emotional experience is incredibly powerful because it satisfies one of humanity's deepest desires, the desire to evolve. Fascinating part is that you probably never intended to become this mirror. Authentic influence rarely comes from trying to impress people. It comes from sincerely living according to your own values. When you focus on becoming the highest version of yourself, you unconsciously give others permission to pursue their own highest version. Your discipline inspires their commitment. Your compassion softens their defenses. Your optimism interrupts their pessimism. Even your willingness to dream boldly encourages them to question the limits they have accepted for years. They begin imagining a future they previously believed was impossible, and because you are connected to that awakening, their feelings naturally deepen. Love grows wherever hope consistently flourishes. This is why chasing perfection is unnecessary. You never had to become flawless for someone to fall deeply in love with you. In fact, your imperfections may have made you even more relatable. They saw someone who encountered challenges yet continued moving forward. They witnessed moments of vulnerability, followed by remarkable resilience. Instead of pretending to have everything figured out, you demonstrated the courage to keep growing. That authenticity became incredibly attractive because it reminded them that they too could overcome their own fears and limitations. Real love does not demand perfection. It celebrates progress. It honors sincerity. It appreciates the courage to continue becoming rather than pretending to have already arrived. There is also something deeply spiritual about this kind of connection. Every meaningful relationship has the potential to awaken forgotten parts of ourselves. Sometimes another person enters our lives not to complete us, but to remind us of the completeness already waiting within. Your presence served as that reminder. Every encouraging conversation, every shared laugh, every moment of understanding quietly dissolved some of the doubts they had carried for years. They started believing in themselves more because they experienced someone who genuinely believed in possibility. Whether you spoke those beliefs aloud or simply embodied them through your actions, the effect was undeniable. You became living evidence that richer, fuller, and more meaningful life was available. As their inner world began changing, so did their emotional connection to you. What initially felt like curiosity gradually transformed into admiration. Admiration slowly deepened into trust. Trust evolved into affection, and affection eventually became love that felt impossible to ignore. They weren't simply attracted to your personality. They were profoundly moved by the version of themselves that awakened whenever they were with you. That feeling became addictive in the healthiest sense because it reminded them of their own untapped potential. Every encounter reinforced the belief that life could become more beautiful, more peaceful, and more fulfilling. That is the second powerful reason someone fell dangerously deep in love with you. You became a mirror reflecting the person they secretly hoped to become. Without demanding change, without forcing inspiration, and without trying to earn admiration, you simply embodied qualities that awakened something extraordinary within them. Your authenticity reminded them of their own strength. Your faith encouraged their own dreams. Your confidence challenged their self-doubt. In your presence, they caught a glimpse of a future where they were braver, happier, and more fulfilled than they had ever imagined. Once a person experiences that kind of awakening, they rarely forget the one who inspired it. Long after the conversations end and the moments pass, they continue remembering the person who helped them believe that their greatest chapter was still waiting to be written, and that person was you. Your inner assumptions quietly became their reality. The third powerful reason someone fell dangerously deep in love with you is one of the most fascinating truths about human relationships. Your dominant assumptions shaped the way you showed up in the world, and those assumptions quietly influenced the connection between you. Every day, whether we realize it or not, we live according to the stories we repeatedly tell ourselves. These stories become assumptions, and assumptions eventually become our reality. If you constantly assume you are overlooked, unworthy, or difficult to love, those beliefs subtly affect your words, your body language, your expectations, and even the opportunities you notice. But when you begin assuming that you are valuable, deeply appreciated, and naturally worthy of genuine affection, everything starts to change. The outer world begins reflecting the transformation that first occurred within you. Someone fell deeply in love with you because they encountered a version of you that was no longer operating from fear, but from quiet certainty. Consider how differently a person behaves when they truly believe they are enough. They do not spend every conversation searching for approval. They do not panic over every delayed message or every misunderstood word. They are present, they listen, they smile without forcing it, they speak with calmness because they are no longer trying to prove their value. This inner confidence is incredibly attractive because it creates emotional stability. In a world where many relationships are filled with anxiety and uncertainty, a peaceful presence feels refreshing. Without realizing it, someone began associating you with emotional security. They discovered that being around you felt lighter, calmer, and more genuine than many of their previous experiences, and that feeling slowly developed into deep affection. What makes assumptions so powerful is that they quietly shape perception. Imagine two people entering the same room. One assumes they are unwanted, while the other assumes they are welcomed. Although the environment is identical, their experiences will be completely different because each person interprets reality through the lens of their dominant belief. The same principle applies to relationships. When you consistently assume that meaningful love is possible, you naturally notice opportunities for connection instead of signs of rejection. Your conversations become more relaxed. Your laughter becomes more sincere. Your curiosity about others becomes genuine because your attention is no longer consumed by self-doubt. These subtle changes seem small, yet together they create an atmosphere that others instinctively enjoy. Love often grows in environments where people feel accepted instead of evaluated. One of the greatest misunderstandings about attraction is the belief that it depends entirely on external qualities. While appearance may capture someone's attention for a moment, inner certainty holds their attention over time. There is something remarkably compelling about a person who is comfortable with themselves. They do not pretend to be perfect. They are not constantly comparing themselves with everyone else. They understand that their worth is not determined by temporary circumstances or the opinions of strangers. This quiet confidence becomes a silent invitation for others to lower their own emotional defenses. When someone feels safe enough to stop pretending, genuine intimacy begins to develop. That is exactly what happened here. Your assumptions about yourself created a peaceful emotional environment where another person's heart naturally opened. It is important to understand that this process was not about controlling anyone else's thoughts. Every individual possesses their own free will, emotions, and choices. However, the beliefs you consistently held about yourself influenced your own behavior, your communication, and the emotional atmosphere you created. In other words, your transformation changed the relationship because it changed you. Instead of seeking constant reassurance, you offered reassurance. Instead of expecting disappointment, you expected meaningful connection. Instead of approaching life with fear, you approached it with trust. Those internal shifts made every interaction feel more authentic, and authenticity is one of the rarest qualities people encounter today. There is a reason why some people remain unforgettable years after they leave a room. It is not because they were the loudest or the most dramatic. It is because they carried an inner consistency that made others feel seen, heard, and appreciated. You may not have noticed it, but every time you believed in your own value, you unknowingly gave others permission to believe in theirs as well. Every conversation became less about impressing and more about connecting. Every smile became more natural because it came from genuine contentment rather than hidden insecurity. These are the kinds of experiences that remain in someone's memory long after specific details fade away. They remembered how peaceful they felt around you, and that emotional memory slowly grew into something they could no longer ignore. Think about how powerful it is when someone enters your life and, simply by being themselves, reminds you that relationships do not have to be complicated. They remind you that honesty can exist without fear, that kindness can exist without weakness, and that confidence can exist without arrogance. Your assumptions shaped that experience. Because you increasingly believed in love rather than chasing it, you became someone who naturally expects patience instead of pressure, understanding instead of judgment, and gratitude instead of desperation. Those qualities created a relationship that felt refreshing because it was built upon emotional freedom rather than emotional dependence. Over time, the person who fell in love with you realized something remarkable. Around you, they did not feel the need to become someone else. They felt accepted as they were, while simultaneously feeling inspired to become even better. That combination is extraordinarily rare. It is one thing to feel comfortable with someone, and it is another to feel encouraged to grow without being criticized. Your inner assumptions created that balance. They allowed you to offer acceptance without lowering standards and encouragement without applying pressure. As a result, your presence became associated with peace, possibility, and emotional safety. That is the third powerful reason someone fell dangerously deep in love with you. It was not because you mastered clever techniques or carefully crafted the perfect image. It was because your deepest assumptions transformed the way you lived. And that transformation naturally influenced every relationship around you. Your belief in your own worth allowed others to recognize your value. Your quiet confidence replaced anxiety with calm. Your expectation of meaningful connection replaced fear with trust. In the end, they did not simply fall in love with your appearance or your personality. They fell in love with the emotional reality they consistently experienced whenever they were with you. A reality shaped first by the powerful assumptions you chose to hold within yourself. That is the extraordinary influence of the inner world. When it changes, everything connected to it begins to change as well. You made them feel emotionally safe in a world that rarely does. The fourth reason someone fell dangerously deep in love with you is perhaps the rarest and most valuable gift one human being can offer another: emotional safety. In a world where so many people feel pressured to wear masks, hide their struggles, and protect themselves from disappointment, finding someone who creates a sense of peace is extraordinary. Most people spend their lives trying to impress others, fearing rejection if they reveal who they truly are. They become experts at pretending they are stronger than they feel, happier than they are, or more confident than they actually believe themselves to be. Yet beneath those carefully constructed walls is a heart longing to be seen without judgment. When they met you, something unexpected happened. They slowly realized they did not have to perform. They did not have to earn your acceptance by becoming someone else. Around you, they felt free to simply exist. That feeling became one of the strongest reasons their affection grew into something they could no longer ignore. True emotional safety is not created through perfect conversations or grand romantic gestures. It is created in the quiet moments. It is found in the way you genuinely listened instead of waiting for your turn to speak. It was revealed in your willingness to understand instead of immediately judging. It appeared in your calm response during difficult conversations, when many others would have reacted with anger or criticism. Every small act of patience became another brick in the foundation of trust. Every expression of kindness quietly communicated the same message: you are safe here. That message reached a part of them that had been longing to hear those words for far longer than either of you realized. Many people confuse excitement with love because excitement is loud, dramatic, and impossible to ignore. But excitement fades when circumstances change. Emotional safety is different. It grows stronger over time. It is the feeling of knowing someone will not abandon you the moment life becomes complicated. It is the confidence that honesty will be met with understanding rather than punishment. It is the freedom to admit fear without being considered weak. This kind of connection is rare because it requires maturity, patience, and genuine compassion. When someone discovers it, they instinctively want to protect it. They treasure it because it satisfies one of the deepest emotional needs every human being possesses: the need to belong without pretending. Perhaps you never realized how powerful your presence had become. Maybe you believed your kindness was ordinary, your patience insignificant, or your empathy nothing special. Yet to someone who had spent years feeling misunderstood, those simple qualities were life-changing. Imagine a person who has wandered through emotional storms for years, finally finding a quiet harbor. The harbor does not need to announce its importance. Its value is understood by the peace it provides. In the same way, your presence became a place where they could rest from constant emotional tension. They no longer felt they had to measure every word or hide every flaw. Instead, they experienced something that had become increasingly uncommon: unconditional respect. One of the greatest expressions of confidence is the ability to make another person feel valued without expecting anything in return. Genuine confidence never competes, controls, or manipulates. It creates space for others to breathe, to grow, and to express themselves honestly. That was one of the invisible gifts you offered. You were not trying to dominate the relationship or constantly prove your importance. Instead, you approached the connection with calm assurance. Ironically, that lack of pressure made your presence even more magnetic. They felt drawn toward you because being with you felt effortless rather than exhausting. There was no constant need to impress or defend themselves. The relationship became a place of restoration instead of performance. There is another reason emotional safety is so powerful. It allows people to reveal dreams they have never spoken aloud. Many individuals hide their biggest hopes because they fear being laughed at or misunderstood. Around you, however, they found the courage to share those hidden ambitions. They talked about the life they wanted to build, the person they hoped to become, and the future they secretly imagined. Every time you responded with encouragement instead of doubt, you strengthened the bond between you. Your belief in their potential became a source of strength they carried long after your conversations ended. People rarely forget those who believed in them before the rest of the world could see what they were capable of becoming. Emotional safety also transforms the way love grows. Instead of being driven by uncertainty, jealousy, or fear of loss, the relationship begins to develop through trust and consistency. They no longer wondered whether they had to constantly earn your affection. They simply experienced it. That certainty created peace, and peace allowed love to deepen naturally. When the heart no longer wastes energy protecting itself, it finally has room to love fully. This is why some relationships grow stronger with time, while others disappear as quickly as they began. One is built upon emotional security, while the other depends entirely upon temporary excitement. The remarkable truth is that you did not create this safety by pretending to be perfect. In fact, your own authenticity made it possible. You were willing to admit mistakes, to learn from experiences, and to approach life with humility instead of pride. Your honesty gave them permission to be honest as well. Your vulnerability became an invitation for them to lower their own defenses. This mutual openness created a connection that felt deeply human, deeply real, and increasingly irreplaceable. They were not falling in love with an impossible ideal. They were falling in love with someone whose genuine character gave them the courage to become genuine themselves. That is why they found themselves thinking about you long after your conversations ended. It wasn't only your smile they remembered. It wasn't merely your voice or your appearance. It was the feeling they experienced whenever they were with you. They remembered how calm their mind became. They remembered how accepted they felt. They remembered that, for perhaps the first time in a very long while, they did not feel the need to hide who they truly were. Those emotional memories became stronger than ordinary attraction because they touched something much deeper than romance. They touched the human need for peace. That is the fourth powerful reason someone fell dangerously deep in love with you. You became a safe place in a world that often teaches people to protect themselves at all costs. Through your patience, authenticity, compassion, and quiet confidence, you created an atmosphere where another heart could finally rest. They discovered that love did not have to be filled with fear, confusion, or constant uncertainty. Instead, they discovered that real love feels like coming home after a long journey. And once someone experiences that kind of emotional home in another person's presence, they rarely forget it. They carry it with them, cherish it, and, more often than not, they fall deeply in love with the one who made them feel that extraordinary sense of peace. You became unforgettable because you chose to be authentically yourself. The fifth and final reason someone fell dangerously deep in love with you is the most powerful of them all. You stopped trying to become someone else's idea of perfection and embraced the truth of who you really are. In a world where countless people wear masks to gain acceptance, authenticity has become one of the rarest qualities a person can possess. Many individuals spend years changing themselves to fit expectations, hiding their opinions, suppressing their dreams, and pretending to be someone they think others will admire. Yet the heart has an extraordinary ability to recognize what is real. It can sense when someone is performing and when someone is genuinely living from the deepest part of their being. When they met you, they encountered something they had been searching for without even realizing it. A person who was comfortable enough to be real. That authenticity became the foundation upon which deep and lasting love quietly grew. Authenticity does not mean being perfect. It means being honest, It means allowing your actions to match your values and your words to match your heart. You did not need to have every answer, nor did you need to impress everyone around you. Instead, you carried yourself with quiet integrity. You celebrated your strengths without arrogance, and you acknowledged your weaknesses without shame. That balance is incredibly attractive because it reflects emotional maturity. People feel safe around those who do not pretend to be flawless. Perfection often creates distance, but authenticity creates connection. Someone fell deeply in love with you because your genuine nature invited them to stop pretending as well. Think about how exhausting it is to constantly perform. Imagine waking up every day wondering whether people would still accept you if they saw your fears, your imperfections, or your unanswered questions. Many people live exactly that way. They become trapped in an endless cycle of seeking approval, carefully editing every part of themselves to fit into someone else's expectations. Then they meet someone who does not play that game. They meet someone who laughs freely, speaks honestly, treats people with kindness, and remains true to their principles, even when it would be easier to compromise. That kind of authenticity is unforgettable because it reminds others of the freedom they have been missing. Around you, they did not feel pressured to maintain an image. They felt invited to become real. One of the greatest lessons about love is that people are not drawn to perfection nearly as much as they are drawn to consistency. Your consistent character spoke louder than occasional grand gestures. You showed kindness not because it was convenient, but because it reflected who you were. You remained respectful during disagreements. You expressed gratitude even in ordinary moments. You chose patience when frustration would have been easier. These daily choices built something much stronger than attraction. They built trust. Trust is the invisible bridge between admiration and love. Without trust, affection remains uncertain. With trust, love grows naturally because the heart no longer feels the need to defend itself. There is also a quiet confidence that comes from authenticity. It is different from pride or arrogance. Arrogance tries to convince the world of its importance, while authentic confidence simply knows its value without needing constant recognition. You carried yourself with this quiet certainty. You did not need to compete for attention because you understood that your worth was not determined by comparison. You allowed others to shine without feeling diminished yourself. This generosity of spirit is deeply attractive because it creates relationships based on mutual appreciation instead of rivalry. They admired the way you celebrated other people without losing sight of your own purpose. That confidence inspired respect long before it inspired romance. Another remarkable quality of authenticity is that it creates emotional freedom. When people no longer fear being judged, they begin revealing parts of themselves they have hidden for years. Around you, conversations became deeper, dreams were shared more openly, fears were spoken aloud without embarrassment. They discovered they could trust you with the parts of themselves they rarely showed anyone else. Every honest conversation strengthened the emotional bond between you. Every shared moment of vulnerability made the relationship feel increasingly meaningful. Over time, they realized they were no longer simply enjoying your company. They were depending upon the peace they experienced whenever they were with you. Authenticity also carries a powerful sense of purpose. People who know who they are naturally inspire those who are still searching for themselves. Your willingness to remain faithful to your values reminded them that life becomes far more meaningful when it is lived with intention rather than imitation. You were not trying to follow every trend or seek approval from every crowd. Instead, you focused on becoming the highest version of yourself. That dedication quietly challenged them to do the same. Love often grows where inspiration exists, and your example became a living invitation for them to pursue a richer, more authentic life of their own. Perhaps the most beautiful part of this entire journey is that you never had to force any of it. You did not manipulate emotions or create elaborate strategies to capture someone's attention. You simply became more aligned with your true nature. As you embraced self-respect, inner peace, compassion, and confidence, Your relationships naturally began reflecting those qualities. The love that developed was not built upon illusion, but upon reality. It was not sustained by excitement alone, but by genuine connection. They loved you not because you pretended to be extraordinary, but because your authenticity made ordinary moments feel extraordinary. A simple conversation became memorable. A quiet smile carried comfort. Even silence between you felt meaningful because it was filled with trust instead of awkwardness. When they looked at you, they saw someone who reminded them that real happiness is not found in pretending to be someone else. They saw someone who had discovered the courage to live honestly, to love generously, and to move through life with quiet confidence. That realization changed the way they viewed not only you but themselves. They began believing that love did not require perfection, endless performance, or impossible standards. Instead, they discovered that the deepest relationships are built upon truth, acceptance, and mutual growth. Your authenticity became proof that real love is possible when two people choose honesty over illusion and connection over comparison. As we conclude this journey, remember this above all else. The greatest attraction you will ever possess is not your appearance, your achievements, or your ability to impress others. Your greatest power is the person you become when your thoughts, beliefs, words, and actions exist in complete harmony. That inner alignment creates a presence that cannot be manufactured and a connection that cannot easily be forgotten. The person who fell dangerously deep in love with you did not simply see your face, they experienced your spirit. They did not merely admire what you had, they recognized who you were. And because you chose authenticity over approval, courage over fear, and truth over performance, you became unforgettable. In the end, the deepest love is never won by becoming someone else. It is awakened when you have the courage to become completely, unapologetically, and beautifully yourself.